If you're a big swim team and you like to order a lot of gear, maybe you ought to check out Swim Outlet Team Division for these reasons. Swim teams receive a 10% discount on bulk orders. Swim teams or organizations get an 8% commission on referred sales. You'll also like their customization services, which is affordable and available at all times during the year for all team gear. With over 50,000 items in stock, you can get most anything you want. Swim Outlet Team Division. You need to try it out. You'll be glad you did.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Morning Swim Show. I'm your host Jeff Cummings down here in Tucson, Arizona. The man sitting next to me is Darian Townsend, Olympic gold medalist in 2004 for South Africa in the 400 freestyle relay. Darian, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem.
So Darian's here. We're here down in Tucson working on a photo shoot for SwimmingWorld magazine. Darian was gracious enough to give us his time to shoot some photos demonstrating the very difficult back to breast rollover turn, and then also demonstrating butterfly turn. So I want to start about talking about that back to breast turn, Darian. The rollover turn obviously is the fastest. It's the best turn that you could do in order to, kind of get an advantage on the field. Do you remember the first time you started learning that? Yeah,
so I first started learning it was actually here in the Tucson, Arizona pool. It was actually Simon Burnett who actually taught me the turn. We used to have peer coaching Thursdays. So we go in the weight room, we come up, we do a small rack set, and then Frank would have us for the next hour just kind of peer coach each other with starts and turns and a little bit of technique. And I remember being an IMer, I was still doing the normal bucket turn, and Simon got a hold of me and says, no ways, you can't do that, you've got to learn this new turn. So we spent the next couple Thursdays just kind of going over the turn and slowly progressing from the bucket turn into the new turn, and eventually I got it, and then I had to learn on both arms at the same time as well, and I never really looked back since then.
What year was that, do you remember?
2007.
Okay, well that was the year you won NCAAs in the
I won it the following year, my senior year, so that was in the fall of 2007, and 2008 I actually won the 200 IM.
Well, we got to thank Simon, I guess, for that, because I think you won it pretty handily. It wasn't that close, but obviously that's had to be a good advantage for you. Kind of you felt like you had a little bit of the upper hand on everybody.
Yeah, definitely. The breaststroke has always been my kind of slowest part of the medley, and being able to take some extra speed into the breaststroke was huge for me. The guys obviously caught me a little bit in the breaststroke, but I think learning that turn and being able to take that extra speed into the breaststroke kind of enabled me to stay ahead until I got back onto the freestyle.
What was the hardest part for you for learning that turn?
I think the actual technique of learning which way to roll and the angles and thing is pretty difficult, but then you get the added difficulty of being under the water for a little bit longer. And after that, there was obviously the new breaststroke pull-out that came too, and that again made you underwater a little bit longer. So just getting the kind of fitness to be under the water and exerting yourself at the same time, that took a while to kind of get that endurance.
Now, there's a lot of people who have trouble with this turn. They have the trouble with trying to make sure they're legal and they're not going past vertical. Was that ever an issue for you, that you felt like, okay, this is you're going even too far over? Or even did you ever get disqualified while you were learning?
I've been disqualified once in the turn. It was at a Winter Nationals in Long Beach in New York. And they said I went too far over onto my stomach when I touched the wall. Not sure if that was true. I tend to disagree with that, but anyway, that's in the past. But learning the angles, that was the only real occasion that I've been disqualified. I've never been warned or anything like that before. So I think also the faster you do it, the less they can see.
Right.
So once you get really good at the technique and you get the speed down, it's kind of hard to see what you're actually doing.
Right.
But I know my turn is legal, so I don't really have to worry about that.
And another thing that you were talking about, you're underwater longer, so it's obviously a lot of lung capacity work you have to do. Did you feel that after you learned it, you went to Frank Bush and said, look, I got to do some more lung work to make sure I'm not gasping for air when I'm starting to swim breaststroke? Yeah,
definitely. I think just doing it in practice every single turn. When I'm doing IMs in practice, whether it's a 200 or 400 IM or 600 IM sometimes, or whatever it is, I'm always doing that turn. So as long as you're doing it in practice every single time and you're not taking a turn off every now and then, I think you'll be fine with the lung capacity.
Let's talk about the fly turn, which you worked with us on. I know butterfly is not your primary stroke, still, I guess, primarily a freestyler. But obviously it is very important, and it's very similar to breaststroke, obviously the same kind of technique. when you're doing these turns, and obviously when you're in the practice situation, you're circle swimming, you're not really having that opportunity to really work on it the right way because you're working on trying to get from one side of the lane to the other. So on a given week, are you ever really fully saying, okay, today I'm going to work on this turn because, you know, I need to work on a certain aspect of it?
Yeah, I think, you know, no matter what turn it is in practice, whether it's the butterfly turn or whatever turn, I'm always trying to be consistent with my turns. The speed that I go around the wall, I never try to really speed it up that much. I like to have a controlled, balanced turn every time I turn. So there are days that I can feel maybe that the fly of the breaststroke turn a little bit off, and the next day I'll come to practice and spend an extra 10 minutes after practice or before just kind of going over the basics of it and just reminding myself of what I should be focusing on. But I think as my kind of philosophy is, you know, you want to train the way you're going to race. So, you know, in practice, I'm always doing what I would do in a race normally, and I think that's a huge help to me.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think coaches always say that, you know, what you do in a race, what you do in workout, you do in a race. So I would imagine that got instilled in your head from a very early age, probably when you were growing up in South Africa.
Right.
When you were training here with the college team at the University of Arizona and then became a post-grad and now swimming with the Masters team, you know, have you ever felt like your turn has evolved as, you know, swimming has evolved?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, especially, you know, when I grew up in South Africa, you know, we did a lot of short course meters swimming and long course meters and no real yards. And when I came to the States here, I learned very early on that I had to get better at the turns. Obviously, college swimming and yard swimming is all about getting yourself around the walls, picking up speed, coming off the wall, working on your underwaters. And so I learned very quickly early on that I had to get better at them. And, you know, it's something I focus on every day still.
I want to go back to the back to breast turn here before we wrap up. You know, I always look back on that 200 IM where you broke the world record. I believe it was in 2009. Michael Phelps in the lane next to you. I think a lot of people I remember a lot of people were like, what? This is just unreal, beating Michael Phelps. You know, obviously I can't imagine anything tops winning Olympic gold, but I would imagine that's something that is really high up on your ladder of races that you'll always remember. Yeah, definitely.
It was a great season for me. You know, I'd gone through all of the World Cups, and I'd won all the medleys that year, and I'd done pretty good in the 200 freestyles. And I'd actually beaten him about 4 days earlier. It was in Stockholm World Cup, but at that time I had played around in the morning a little too much, and I actually ended up getting lane 8 in the final. And I think he was in lane 4, so I just beat him in on that one, but I don't think he really knew I was out there on the end. So the next time around, a couple of days later in Berlin, we managed to set ourselves up next to each other for the final. And, you know, it was a great feeling breaking the world record, but to be able to beat the greatest swimmer of all time in the same race was the cherry on top, you know. So it's definitely one of, you know, my career highlights, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the nice thing he said to me afterwards was he had seen me do the 200 freestyle, and I'd just gone the South African record in that, and I'd gotten third behind Biederman and Hayden. And he was standing on the podium, and Michael turns over to me and says, "Hey, that was a tough double, nice job." And for a guy like Michael to say it was a tough double, well, it was huge, because we all know how many tough doubles he's done in his life, tough triples sometimes. You know? So for that, to get a compliment like that from Michael Phelps was huge for me.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a lot of great moments you got still to come in your career, and we're looking forward to seeing many more of them, Darian. Thanks so much for joining me today, and thanks so much for doing this photo shoot. I'm sure a lot of people are going to learn how to do that back to breast turn a little bit, learn also a little bit more about how to properly execute a fly turn.
Yeah, thank you, no problem.
And be sure to watch out for Darian's photo shoots in upcoming issues of SwimmingWorld magazine. So thanks again for joining us for today's edition of the Morning Swim Show. I'm Jeff Cummings. Thanks for watching.